firefighters, um, or so we would have a reduction in the excess. As time went on, the more we have to put in, the less we would have an excess, but we would still have the revenue sitting there to support those expenditures once they become our responsibility. With, if we continue with the gain in revenue, or not even a gain, if we just keep what we've got right here. Right. Now, I think in the coming year, we've projected a reduction to a degree. But after, 2021, if we see a recovery back to where we were in the spring or in the winter of 2020, then I think we'll have revenues to support those expenditures. Maybe not, or salary increases across the board, but I think we will for those firefighters.
Okay.
One last question, I'm sorry. I don't have the sheet in front of me, but what is the balance, if you will, if we have set aside for new admin building project?
Well, we had about $5 million, and we've spent some of that on the courthouse claims. Mm-hmm. And then we've got, I think there's about $4.3 million left that we're holding in case the courthouse, there's issues there that we can't resolve with the amount of money that we have in this settlement account.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're not going to have to tap into those funds. Mm-hmm. That would be a perfect scenario where we didn't, and then we can roll that money back into the admin building. But at this point in time, we want to make sure that the judicial center is properly renovated, mm-hmm. so that we don't have any issues with it going forward, and we kind of put that one to bed before we start a new project in the county admin building.
Yeah. And when are they supposed to get through with that?
This building?
Judicial center. Yeah.
I think it's going to take about a year to complete that, mm-hmm. the full renovation. But they're really getting after it. I think you can see the scaffolding over here on mm-hmm. this side, and they've started removing the cast stone from there. And personally, I think I can see progress every day, and I'm watching it. And a lot of times mm-hmm. when you're watching a construction project, you may go in every day and you don't really see that much change for a mm-hmm. while. But it seems like every day they're making progress. So hopefully ahead of schedule would be nice.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, we're going to have another conversation about, I guess, like the trash situation, or are we just kind of approving this, or are we going to hear some more information? I know Commissioner Fuller has been working on some of this with Mr. Pope. I just didn't know if we were going to learn a little more, if that was going to be at another time, or I didn't want to take up too much time. I didn't know exactly what you wanted us to kind of discuss. Or
just recently, we've had a convenience center issue since January. It has started to really compile, and Charles and I've been meeting with them. A lot of it rained a lot, January, February, March, and it seemed like the only sunny day was Sunday. So by virtue of the sunny day, all the trash was loading up on those days. Well, then we had COVID, and it has been like crazy. So we have met with them, Charles and I, and then we met again last week. And then the new conversation was if we could get some compactors at Noonan Road, it would certainly help the issue by stuffing things down. So when Alicia and I were looking at these numbers, and she was asking, the other things we had talked about, I had said, well, I just recently had a meeting. If we can throw that money in there too, I know it would make several of us happy to see a serious progress in something. So that was just put in there because it worked. And in talking with Charles, it's something that we can move forward. We do, again, need to do something with that one, whether we do it now or we do it in SPLOST, but it fit. So I threw it out there for y'all to decide yes, no, that's where we are on that one. It just, we're just very lucky that Carroll County has shopped, and we were able to have these extra monies, and that our department heads have been very frugal in the areas that we have options. It's very nice to have options to do something with, compared to years we've sat and we were holding our breath and there was nothing. So this is just put out to y'all as ideas there again to, move around.
Well, I'm definitely supportive of it. I guess we all know that, you know, I go back to the idea of in the municipalities, you pay so much a month and you get this little amount that you can have picked up. And in the county, you can drive 10 pickup truck loads up there unchecked as long as it fits furniture or normal garbage or plastic or whatever. And I know we're a long ways from fixing all of our issues there. So I'm supportive of this item. I guess I'm just talking about the bigger idea that we're obviously going to continue to see these costs go up and up and up. And at what point, if municipalities continue to go up on a little small amount, what point do we maybe say you can't no longer bring 20 pickup truck loads for absolutely free at the county? And so I'm not even insinuating to start charging today or ever. I'm just simply saying that is going to continue to be an absolute escalating cost that I want to make sure we continue to wrap our hands around.
I think that's a committee, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
So I see.
Yeah, and I guess when I saw that item, that was kind of why I brought that up. I just didn't know if this was part of some conversations that happened.
It was just a quick,
Right.
because conversation that happened last week, and it was like
Right.
a quick fix, you
Right.
know, but, so it just happened to work, so. But there again, it's, optional to move and do something else with.
Well,
And
if I can put in.
Yeah, I'll go ahead, Steve.
The attendants are becoming more aware and looking at which one, Charles, is it that's closed in Cayuga? Is it one of their big compactors, something burned in Cayuga County?
Their transfer station.
Yeah, the transfer station burned. So we're getting people from Cayuga County trying to bring their trash here. They're aware of it down here at the one on Union Road, and they've been turning people away from there and telling them to take it somewhere else. And the conversation that we had with Charles and the folks from GFL, is that right, GFL? A compactor, they can haul 3 times the amount of trash off-site if it's been compacted, rather than picking it up with the truck and dumping it in the back loose. So that saves fuel in the long run, which hopefully will transfer to us. They're not having to make so many trips. So that's why we look pretty strong at these compactors, because, you know, we can get less trips.
Moving forward, that would be the next step in the sanitation side, to step up. It would be more backwards. For instance, Dyer Road, we get about 1,300 cars a day through there. And one compactor, they fill up every day. So Union Road would just go one compactor a day, we've got to rotate them out. So a compactor would be the next step that I would recommend.
And didn't they mention about 30,000 per contractor, per compactor?
Yeah, we bought, the one we bought at Dollar Road, of course, it's been there 10 years now, and it cost us $88,000 to rebuild Dollar Road with all the concrete, everything we done. I think the compactor then was about 40,000 for both of them. That's a compactor and the receiver can is about 40,000.
For 2.
The Dollar, Union Road wouldn't set up for compactor when we built it. Now we got to go refigure it and try to get it fixed so we can put compactors in there and where the cars will still flow around in a circle without backing up.
Charles, go ahead.
You was here when you didn't have the compactors on Dyer Road. Did you see a decrease in having to haul that stuff once you put the, saw a big difference?
They dump Union Road now 2 times a day with the front loader cans. We've got 28 cans out there. They dump it 2 times a day. Really, on Saturday and Sunday, they need to dump it extra time. That's when they don't come back at 4 or 5 in the evening, so that's when they fill up. If you had a compactor, you would get the whole day's work in one compactor.
So this is an example of a capital improvement that would save on our budget for next year and the next couple of years. So this would be an improvement not only visually, but also in the budget line item.
Maybe it'll cut down on some of the interesting pictures I get from folks out in the county too.
Also, we're planning on doing one temple too, if y'all approve it, I'll call back. Excuse me, make that center bigger up there, so it'll be a lot nicer.
Hey, Charles, we probably need you to come to the
To the podium.
podium, sorry.
Now, if they're talking, I'll come up here. But but we did talk about Temple too. The way Temple's laid out, we own all that property down to Taylor's Gin. So we can make that a one-way in like it is now, and then you exit out onto Taylor's Gin. Make it a lot safer, make it a straight drive-through with compactors there too.
If it saves us money, it makes sense to do that at every dump, at every station.
At the end of the day, it will save the county money.
Now, they mentioned Temple and Noonan Road as the two worst.
I don't know, Dyer Road's pretty bad.
Yeah. I get complaints from the Noonan, even in my district, from Oak Mountain and Clem area.
Yeah.
So
Give them Steve's number.
I give them Steve number.
Yeah, he does.
I wanted to say something as far as the legal fees. We obviously, as Ms. Cersei talked about, there was a lot that went on at COVID, and you know, there's one thing, it doesn't matter if times are good or bad, everybody calls their attorney. So I know just me, myself, I called the attorneys several things that was during that time. And another thing that I've been asked a couple of times about is, you know, why does the county need two attorneys? And so I think that it's fair to give a little bit of background on that. For instance, the meeting that we're at today, we have two attorneys here, but we're not being charged for two. We're only being charged for one. And I'm not going to sit and get in the dynamics if this is a wonderful deal we have or if it's a terrible deal we have, but I do believe that both of our attorneys work hard. And I think if you think about the size of our institution with 600 employees and all the dynamics of things that go on, from lawsuits to land situations to COVID, to workman's comp, to contracts, and the list goes on and on and on. I kind of like the idea that we have two that are submersed in everything. If someone was out sick, or if one has a specialty in contracts and the other one has more of a specialty in maybe trying to help deal with employee situations with human resources or whatever the scenario may be. So I do want the community to understand, just because we have two attorneys that are working for us, yes, they may be working on different things, but every time you see two does not mean we're getting a bill for two in the moment. And I think that's important for the community to understand. So I appreciate the work you all do.
Appreciate that. So if there's not any further questions, come Tuesday, I will look for a motion and a second on if you like the way this is presented or if you have some other ideas. But that's what I'll be looking for on Tuesday.
I do have,
Oh,
if
please.
we're, a couple more questions on, if we're just moving through all of this financial, Chairman. On the aerial flyover, we had a good meeting the other couple weeks ago, whatever it was, with Chairman Fulford on that. And from that meeting, what we gathered was that it was not cited in an audit. It is not required by an audit. It is a good thing to do, but it's like, I guess I walked away from there thinking, well, it's a good enhancement, but it's not actually required, and we're not going to get penalized if we don't do it. And I did talk with Major Dodson out at the sheriff's office as far as law enforcement's use and that kind of thing, and he said, no, we don't need it, that they have. If they want to see anything like that, they can use a drone or call in somebody or something. So he didn't think they would benefit, in other words. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I did notice on the contract, it seems as if on page 14, that they divide this into two projects. The first project being the first flyover, I guess, and the second one being the next one. But on page 14, it looks like the entire, even though on page 1 it's broken down into 3 payments of $34,476, the first one is all due at signing. So the entire $104,000 or $103,400 would be due at signing. Or as the second one, as shown on page 15, you pay that third at the initial shipment, a third the next year, and a third the third year. So it just looks like this is an actual $104,000 obligation right now when we sign it. So.
I'm gonna let Stacy address that for you.
If you, they'd offered three annual installments for the first flyover, but I think we requested the ability to pay it immediately because we had the excess funds in this fiscal year. Mm-hmm. And so that was at our, if we can choose to do the 3 years, but if we elect to, we can go and pay it all up front to have the books cleaner because it would be paid through the funds we have this year available. So, and the cover agreement is the one that takes priority in the one like the typed before the vendor's form starting on that page 12, I think. But it says the second flyover is totally optional. You don't have to purchase that.
Right.
They just wanted to lock in the price if you chose to do it.
Okay. And I guess we shopped this or got some competitive bids or whatever on this, or
James, would you like to come forward and give more detail for us, please?
We've had conversations with other vendors, but Eagle View, which used to be Pictometry, they've consolidated over the term. They're the most predominant in the market. They actually do all the counties in West Georgia. So we haven't shopped it, but we beat it up pretty hard. And a lot of the pricing is based on the quality of the image as well. I can't remember the breakdown, but call it 6 feet and 4 feet based on city and versus county. And if you're in the more metropolitan areas, they even get closer in, which costs a lot more money because of the camera qualities. But Pictometry is if you go to all the state classes and everything, they're the ones that are highly recommended. And as I state, all the counties, Haralson County, Heard County, Douglas County, the only reason they didn't use them this year was they're in a similar situation. They were using budgeted funds from this current fiscal year, and they just couldn't get to them. So they actually went to another third vendor. But Paulding County, Coweta County, they all use Pictometry, the Eagle View company.
And I wanted to follow up on a couple of comments on the topic and what Commissioner Reynolds brought up. Originally, when during the time when our Chairman Marty Smith left us, and we had Commissioner Chambers that was our interim, we met with the chief assessor and brought the information before us, and it was presented in the manner that this had essentially had been a finding. And I think what had happened is maybe there was some semantics there with wording. And I'm glad that Commissioner Reynolds brought this up because I was under the impression it was an exact finding, hey, you need to do this. But in learning more about it, I think what she was referring to was the idea that years ago there had been a mandate sent down from the state and basically said, you people need to reassess, you haven't done this so long. And so I think she was mixing in this was something that we need to do or a protocol that we need to have in place to update this to make sure we're fulfilling that mandate. So I think both sides are right, if you will, Commissioner Reynolds, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I was under the impression it was an exact finding, but I also don't think it was necessarily incorrect because it was tying back into the fact of the reassessments. And Chairman Fulford had brought up before, you have an unpopular department, right? Nobody loves to go down and pay taxes. Nobody wants to write out that check, but it's a part of government. It's a part of how we have revenue. I don't look at the flyover as a part of trying to do anything other than we have to stay current with situations. If we want to adjust based on the market, We have that ability through the millage rate. But when you start having people that have the honesty to come in and say, hey, I'm building a barn, and you have other people that are not honest and they're on a 100-acre tract of land and nobody can get to that to see, are we really doing a job of fair assessment by every so often not giving you the tools that you need to make sure it's a fair and balanced across the board? So I don't think you can mince two to say, well, I don't want to do this or it's going to apply more pressure. Well, it's not. We need to make adjustments here of where we feel the millage rate needs to be, fair and equitable. Your job is to have the tools to make sure that everyone is treated equally when you give those assessments. And I understand the flyover doesn't necessarily fix all the problems in the world, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if you have people and you have no way to get on their property and they're building stuff, that may be the only way that you can do that. So I see this as just, there's nothing, as Mr. Pilgrim used to say, there's nothing sexy about this, wanting to have to purchase it, but the reality is I think it just is a tool that is commonly used to make sure that we have updated information so you can do your job. And one thing that I do want to press about, I did read in the information that there needed to be some type of standard in which you were applying. And there are things that you can pull off the internet that are free, and we talked about this in our meeting, and I've talked with other professionals. And I want to reiterate this again. A lot of time those images are taken at different times of the year. There could be leaves on trees where the satellite images don't pick up certain things that it needs to pick up, or you couldn't tell even from a high altitude if somebody maybe is built on or not. They could be images that come in and just kind of show the front porch. You can't tell if they built on the back porch. So I don't think this is an invasion of privacy or anything of that standard. I also don't think that you don't always get something additional by getting something for free. Sometimes you have to pay for it. And so by using those free online satellite images you might have access to, that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the quality that you need to do your job. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. You can tell me if you disagree with any of that, but that's just my analysis, and I've been looking at this for over a year as well. And so no matter where we're at on the end of this, if we think we need to do it or not, I just don't want us to mix and say, well, we don't need to do this because it's not fair to the taxpayer. Well, how is it not fair? You have to have the tools you have to do your job correctly. So that's how I see it.
That's correct. And even in this circumstances we're under right now, it's even more pressing because we didn't have everybody out on properties doing inspections. And as a homeowner, they look at it not as an invasion, but also as you're not social distancing, you're on my property, but they will pull the invasion of privacy as well sometimes. And Mr. Fuller, you had asked me before, but that oblique imagery is only for the county government only. It cannot be used by the public. So only departments of the county could access that. And we're limited to 50 people to access that at one time. So we could give Mr. Pope an access where he could see it for public works needs if they need it. To your point, the sheriff's department doesn't directly use it, but they rely on 911 all the time, and 911 does use it. But having the safety behind it, having the ability to improve our staff's job performance. I mean, if they go out, let's just say they go out and inspect a new construction, that doesn't mean they go and inspect the house next door to it, but if they go back to the office and pull up this updated imagery, they may just decide, oh, where'd this building come from? I didn't see that on that record card, or I didn't see it when I was out there. So it is an ability for us to do our job better. It does give an updated flyover for us, for the public to see will just be a flat 2D, but even when I say community development and Carroll County with the Economic Development Group, they can see more current what our county looks like instead of an image that's 6 years old. But it is very beneficial to our department. I think it's beneficial to the county.
And if we wanted to, on the financial side, we could go to a 3-year payment, 34.
They offered a 3 annual installment for the first flyover if you chose to do that. I'm not sure accounting-wise how Alicia would want to handle that.
We actually had proposed that before. It's never been put in our budget, and we were finally in a position where we had a bullet to use, and we were under balance in our budget. So it was the perfect opportunity to just lump sum pay it. So we did present it last year to fund a third, and it just got cut.
I was just thinking about precautions on the COVID side and so on, so. if we wanted to,
I mean, from a cash flow standpoint, it makes better sense to split it up, but
Yeah.
the fact that we've got the resources today and we don't know that we'll have it later, it just made sense.
Once you do this, if we go this way, how long before that will be put into your system where we can use it or where you can use it?
Probably-
It takes time, I know.
Yeah, it'd probably go live around January, what they call a leaf off flyover, because with the leaves down, you can actually see more. Not just see the improvements, but you can see the soil types based on the tree types. So it doesn't take them long to fly it, minus taking the software and stitching the imagery together. I would dare to say probably first quarter of '21.
I know Commissioner Chance talked to a commissioner and he said it paid for itself almost the first year.
Well, and I had spoken with a few of the commissioners before, and I can give specific instances of taxpayers who, nothing against them, but have had additions onto their properties over the years that have foregone paying their fair share of taxes because of a locked gate.
related to that, just a side question, but how are we coming on the cell tower audit side?
So we had an initial survey done on 2 towers. They gave us what I call rough data. We're scrubbing that data. It was gross values based on initial construction, so we have to go through the depreciation schedules, and they gave us a lot more detail compared to AT&T, and we have to compare what AT&T's reported versus what they're recommending. I will say currently, just as a rough vet, the cost was around $135,000 to do the entire county cell towers. There's about 60 towers. Based on what I did rough calculation, the revenues would break even year 1. Obviously, you would see additional revenue in year 2 and 3. So year 1, we're roughly estimating that same $130,000 to $150,000 in additional revenue. Now, understand, cyclical, you're going to have the expense in 1 year and the revenue won't be recognized until the next year. But overall, if you're looking at it, years 2 through 3 and 4, we would actually pick up $100,000+ a year. But the question we pose to them is, how often do you do these full countywide cell audits? Because most of these cell towers work on a 10 to 13 year depreciation, and minus the initial tower construction, I don't know how well from a code side, permit side, they actually apply to go touch the tower and update something. So that's something we've got to work with community development on to understand, do we get notification when they touch these towers? Because if they do, that's when we need to be updating, refreshing our data, and it could make it where this may just be something you do every 7 to 10 years, just to keep a clean update. But cell tower, I mean, it's a big value, but like I said, we want to make sure we present clean data, that y'all have all the correct information.
And I asked that question at our last meeting when we approved a tower, how that process worked. And I know Mr. Skipper got up and spoke and said that the way it works is, yes, they're supposed to come in, they get the permit, that triggers it, and they send it to your office. Now, obviously, I don't know all the in-between, but that was something on our radar. I know that we were wanting to make sure that those companies were going through the proper channels. At least the one person said that they did when they go back to add additional equipment, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's the valuation after that that's the big thing. And like I say, it's good to know kind of it would add 100,000 plus.
And I didn't get to dig in after the conversation, but I think preliminarily what we found out is we just get a summary report from community development. The guys that actually did the audit say that they should give you the entire design plans because it itemizes what's on that tower. And we weren't, from what I understand, we weren't being given that before, but it's just a matter of getting the departments aligned and making sure that we have the proper information in the front end. And then we can compare it to the tax returns when they're filed.
And so what we're hearing you say, then that is happening. So there's no more
Well,
gray area.
there's no new towers right now, but it had, from what I understand, it had not been happening. But there again, it's a dialogue between the 2 department heads to say, we've got to get this on the same page, and to be reinforced by you all to say, this will happen.
And it's a matter too, I think, of, correct me if I'm wrong, but of someone at the tax assessor's office knowing, because right now, from what I've been told, there's nobody over there that knows how to value things. In other words, you might get the information, but there's nobody that has the expertise to
Well, on
value
specific
it.
things like
So-
a cell tower, billboards, I mean, it
Right.
takes some specialty.
Right.
expertise, not just anyone, it's not like valuing a residence.
Right.
So yes, we pretty well rely on the information provided by the vendor, by, your cell tower companies. But yes, it is very difficult to go, what is that? He broke it down the other day, and there's 50 categories just of equipment, not the tower itself, but the equipment that each carrier, AT&T, and there's 4 major carriers, are putting on these towers. And, they get it down all the way down to a coaxial cable. And if you don't have a return that's identifiable, and accountants are good, these companies are very intelligent, they know how to work their magic and reshuffle the data where we can't understand it. So to that point, that's why I say maybe every 7 to 10 years it's worth an audit, because you have those experts that have been in the industry that understand it. And something they mentioned to us is maybe when a new tower is built, is they review that first year return compared to the design to make sure that we pick it up properly.
We got 2 brand new ones.
3, actually.
Well, third one being built,
Yeah.
2 brand new ones.
I apologize, I'm unaware of any new ones. I just know the ones that we've spoken about. And we picked on 2 predominant ones. We used the one at the cell barn because everybody sees it. And then there's a major one out on Carrollton Tice Road.
Well, they just built one up at the Triangle, and they built another one down close to Whitesburg, and they've got one going up down close to Ephesus. Is that where it's going?
Well, we'll
So,
make
yep.
sure that for those 3 that the right information flows over from community development.
Good.
So Commissioner Reynolds, to follow up, I guess we'll talk between now and Tuesday if there's a consensus with staff, if we think we're better to, while we've got the money, as Mr. Fulford states, because it was already in their budget, do we go ahead and just get it out of the way, so to speak, and we don't have to worry about that? Or do we leave 70 grand, so to speak, continuing to make what little bit of interest we can make?
Well, the way we would need to account for that, if we spread the payments out, then we would have to spread those amounts out in our budget. So we would need to be prepared to add
Okay.
the second third of that into next year's budget, and the third of that into the following year's budget if we spread those payments out, because it's, when you expend the money is when it hits your budget. So that's,
Good point.
having this money here available to do that with and spending it at the same time makes it pretty clean. But I'm not opposed to doing it the other way either. If you feel like that's a better way to do it, I'm okay with doing that. I just want you to understand the impact on the budget going down the road.
I'm old school. We
I
got the
have
money
found
paid.
that sometimes that money disappears, not a reflection on anybody, but it's just like your home budget. You put money aside for something and you go to get it and it's not there anymore.
That's right.
So.
Now, if you can pump the interest up, Alicia, at about 10% at the bank for us, we might think differently. And is that a banker over there, or is that?
Okay, any more questions, like on the capital, the category 1, the capital items, anything else you're missing? Okay, the second category is the employees, and there's actually 4 options that were sent out that y'all can look at and decide which one you feel the strongest about, which one you think will be the best benefit to the employees is over. And then, of course, category 3 is the fund balance. So any other questions on these 3 categories at this time?
Did we get that in the email, the different way to do the budget?
You did, there's,
We
you
did.
got this one, options 1, 2, and 3, and then
Okay.
this afternoon, Alicia and Ann sent what Clint had suggested based on how long you worked.
Okay.
That
So it's in
one,
the email.
that one wasn't sent until probably an hour before this meeting, so you
Okay.
may not have it. But you should have
When
it
you
in
get
your
home,
email.
you'll have it, so.
I personally like years of service. You know, I think if you've been here and been dedicated, I think that you should get more than somebody that's just starting. That's just me, my opinion.
I agree. I mean, I think there's a threshold if we want to do something for an employee, and we've tried to do that in the 4th option. But as Commissioner Lee states, I mean, if we've had an employee that's been here 45 years or 46, 49 years, it rings a bell in your head versus someone that's been here 6 months versus 49 years. I think there needs to be a difference in what we're rewarding there.
Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, we'll move on to 7.2, SPLOST renewal, a consideration of a date for referendum allowing the citizens of Carroll County to vote on the renewal, it needs to be in all caps there, renewal of the current SPLOST. Not a new tax, a renewal of the tax. So I'm going to turn it over to Stacy Blackman, who's been working on our timeline through all this mess, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. That's right, this is the renewal of the existing penny sales tax that is set to run out next March. And so our initial timeline to have the election was in November, but things have been delayed a little bit because of COVID. We initially were going to have our meeting with the municipalities in March, and that got delayed till May because of the COVID event. And at that meeting in May, one of the cities brought up the option that they liked of postponing the election till next March. And because of COVID, a lot of people haven't had a chance to meet and talk about their projects, or you're meeting in different venues and Zoom, and it's hard to have a meaningful conversation. And also the eSPLOST, education SPLOST, which for the schools, which is different, that was an existing tax too, but it was coming up for vote in March and got delayed till June. And yesterday, Tuesday, excuse me, that passed like 63-something%. So
That's exciting.
that's good. So, but I think the comment was made, maybe those two elections being so close together, maybe that's confusing. What is the school tax and what is the county tax used for? So those were some of the thoughts that were presented. So we asked the cities at that meeting if they wanted to go back and talk to their city councils. Could they get back to us by June 15th? And then hopefully y'all would have time to think about it, whether you want to put it off till March. We've heard from the city of Carrollton and Temple. They both are liking March. The one downside potentially is that usually your collections don't start for one fiscal quarter after the election. There is an exception in the SPLOST Act that we can ask for, a waiver of that to avoid a gap in collections. The Department of Revenue Commissioner can grant a waiver if there's emergency circumstances and it's administratively feasible. So we were waiting to ask for that waiver on up the chain until we knew that there was really a consensus to go with March. But that's a possibility. That it'd still be the 6-year collection period. It'd just be, worst case scenario, we'd have 1 quarter gap without those collections. So this is just an opportunity for you all to talk about it and see what you'd like to do, and you can vote on Tuesday if you want to. We will be pushed on a really tight time frame. If we go with no member, we'll need to call a special meeting to talk about the project list, because we talked about that a few months ago. So
My concern is voter turnout in November and voter turnout in March. I think it's going to be a big difference there. And that is my concern, is the voter turnout if we wait till March.
One thing that I think is critical about the new SPLOST is also proving what we did with the current or old SPLOST. And so, I'm sure we can still make this happen in November, but I know one thing I want to be able to do, and Ms. Cersei did provide us with a kind of a generic list a couple of months ago, and that was very beneficial. You broke down a lot of stuff that gave us some ideas of things we have spent SPLOST money on, but I'd like to even amplify that and kind of come up with something to go back to my constituents about and explain these are the things that we have accomplished that you don't necessarily see beyond a fire truck or a brand new building. There's a lot of SPLOST things that are needed in the infrastructure that you may not realize that money has been spent towards. So to me, that's critical in helping to prove to the constituents why they need to approve a new one, not only the new projects, but proving to them what we have done in the moment and holding ourselves accountable. And I think there's a substantial list that we can prove all the things that we have done. So for me, that is one of my considerations in looking at this. So.
I would agree, but depending on when we do it is how fast we buckle down and start getting our word out. And So you're right, it's a volume thing of who votes in November, who votes in March. It's also the time frame that we have not been able to meet together except over staticky phones and then, in a fabulous building that was not built for, commissioner meetings, but for animals. So for us to, if we go with November, we've got to really buckle down and start having some meetings so that we can do a proper job of educating and informing our public of those said items. So it's,
We had a great turnout for the past election, which we all know that by the numbers. And I know we're gonna have that in November or better, but I'm not sure about March.
so these are things that we need to let Stacy know on Tuesday, which way we want to go, so we know what kind of time frame we need to get going on, or if we have a little bit more luxury in time to work on stuff. So that's why you're being asked to make a decision come Tuesday night.
So the 1/4 gap, that would
Yes.
mean no SPOS collections for 3 months.
Correct.
But we're already having conversations. I've already had a couple conversations with some state people that we want to do the waiver. But before I start pushing that button and really getting on it, I don't need to have them do work if we're not going to do March. But the conversations are being held, and it seems to be very favorable. But yes, we wanted to let you know there's that other liability, that there could be 90 days.
Well, I'm good with March. It's not that I'm not, I just don't think that we're gonna have the percentage, and it might fail in March.
Well, if, I guess we'll know Tuesday from the rest of the city. So sometimes the power in numbers means more people to work for whichever month they want. So there's something to be said for that too. So we'll know more, but y'all that's something you need to ponder over the weekend, the pros and cons, and figure out what you think is the best case scenario, so she can prepare
Right.
which deadlines we need to quickly meet, or if we have a little bit more time and discussion and, so.
Good,
Well, this-
thank you.
This COVID-19 thing seems to operate a little like the flu in that it's it's not going away, but it's reduced. March, we're going to be coming right out of winter, and that's when all the cases spiked here this year, was in March and April. So, we may be trying to run an election in the middle of another COVID outbreak if we do it in March. So I guess that's something.
It sounds like, Ms. Blackman, your job is to go find the crystal ball and let us know which date we need to go with. So between now and Tuesday, I'm sure you can work with Mr. Jackson and y'all can figure that out for us.
No problem.
Oh, Avery's got a crystal ball.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, did he say?
Avery got a crystal ball in his pocket.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, I want to remind you that tomorrow we are doing giving a fire truck to Fairfield. So there again, another email that got stuck in the universe somewhere. And then for y'all to check your calendars for some dates that Susan and Christy had sent you in some text messaging. So if there's no other business, I'm going to stand us adjourned.